Hi, everyone. My name is Shelby O'Neill. I am the founder of a nonprofit called Junior Ocean Guardians, and I also created a challenge called No Straw November. And I am beyond honored to be joined here with Dianna Cohen, someone who I love very dearly. Dianna Cohen is the co-founder and CEO of Plastic Pollution Coalition, and she's a passionate advocate for a world free of plastic pollution. She's a Los Angeles-based artist whose visual art has been shown all over the world, and she's also done a really great TED Talk that I recommend Googling and listening to after this. So thank you for being with me, Dianna.
Thank you for having me, Shelby. It's a total honor.
Um,
Do you want to talk about yourself a little more too?
sure. So I'm currently a freshman at UC Berkeley. I'm studying global environmental politics to hopefully make worldwide change. I've done some policy here and there in California, and yeah, that's where I was lucky enough to meet Dianna along the way, fighting against plastic pollution. So, for those of you who don't know a lot about Dianna's story, I would like to start out asking you kind of what inspired the spark within you. You know, how did you get started? Like, what was the key, like, part of your life that you're like, oh my God, plastic pollution is such a huge issue?
Yeah, so I'm happy to share my story with you guys and with you, Shelby. When I was, it starts a while ago. When I was in university, I was studying biology and art, and I was really focused on the idea of, actually, to be honest, I was just an artist. I was an artist who was passionate about some personal things, but interested in gardening, interested in the ocean, interested in nature and the environment. So when I graduated from college, I began making work at a certain point that was collage based. I went from paintings to collage based work. And initially I was using brown paper bags and cutting those up and beginning to sew those back together because I was fascinated by the material and deconstructing the bags, which really represented something human to me. And at some point, I came across a plastic bag from a homeopathic pharmacy that had an image of a plant printed on it and the name in Latin. And I found a really deep irony in that. And so I combined that piece into what I was making. And I had this very special kind of eureka moment for myself where I went, oh my God, plastic. This is such an interesting material. I wasn't thinking of it positively or negatively. I just thought it was an interesting material because plastic and plastic bags represent human beings in a way. It's something we've invented. It's something we've created. I wasn't really thinking about what it was made out of yet either. I was just having a fascination with the material. And then realizing that plastic bags come in all these different colors. They're transparent, they're translucent. They have imagery of animals and plants and different things printed on them. They have fonts and text and words, and that I could cut them up and reposition them and get the art pieces that I began making to say things that were of interest to me that I wanted to talk about. And so after working with that material for about the first 8 years, some of the bags and some of the pieces I was using started to fissure and get little cracks and break apart. And I got excited and I thought it meant that the plastic was organic and ephemeral like us, you know, like a daisy, like a flower, like our cats, like our dogs, like everything around us and our bodies, and was disintegrating and really breaking down and going back to the earth. So I started exploring that and found out that's actually not the case. That's not what's happening with plastic. Plastic is made from petroleum. Plastic is this incredible material that we use for everything around us, and yet it fissures and cracks and breaks and turns into smaller pieces. But those smaller pieces are getting into the environment and our air and our water and everything. So I didn't realize all of that at the time, but I became fascinated by the idea that the plastic broke apart. And then in about 2006, 2007, I started hearing this, it almost felt like a lone voice. It was Captain Charles Moore, who founded Algalita Marine Research Institute. And he was yelling as loud as he could and saying, people, wake up. We have a problem with plastic getting into the ocean. I've now traveled through this area, the Northeastern Pacific gyre, and it's become a garbage patch. Wake up, what are we doing? And I heard his voice. I think a lot of us did. And I reached out to him And when I first spoke to him, my idea was to go out and clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and get a cargo ship and decommission, trawlers and a cold molding machine. And I was talking to these brothers who had invented a chipping machine that could take up to 50% organic matter. So I started building this advisory board of business people and scientists to help me begin to understand what was happening in the ocean, what were the properties of plastic, and could I go out there, raise awareness about it as an artist, bring other friends, and figure out how to clean it up. So that was really my initial intention. And I spent about a year working on a proposal for that. And as I worked on it and learned more, I realized that cleaning it up was going to be a Sisyphusian task and would just be a small drop in the bucket relative to how much plastic is being produced every year. And that's when I decided to stop and back up and look at the bigger picture and began to connect with other people who were also looking at this picture. And we came together and we decided to create the Plastic Pollution Coalition. So we were founded in 2009. I can talk more about it if you want me to, Shelby, but let's hear from you too.
Well, we both had the honor of going to Algalita's International Youth Summit on Plastic Pollution. I know we've talked about this a lot, just like between us personally, but the thing that I face a lot, especially being from an inland community, and I know other people face this all over the world, but it's connecting plastic production to climate change and just overall all these other issues we see in the world. Like when I did a lot of advocacy in high school, and kids would come up to me and be like, you should really spend your time fighting climate change. And it was really hard for people to understand how the combustion and like process that it takes to make plastic and extraction of the earth creates CO2 and overall adds to this bigger picture that we're seeing. And luckily at Algalita's Youth Summit, we got to see Story of Plastic, which kind of really lays out that connecting line. And I was just wondering, what do you think challenges going forward regarding education? How do you think we can make people understand from like inland California or like middle of the States or in middle of anywhere that the single-use plastic straw they're using or kind of plastic cup, that when they throw it away, it does have the potential to get into the ocean? How do you make that relatable to people?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that I would make that relatable to people, and I think, I've had the same experience as you, let me say, that I've had people approach me after I've spoken at something and say, you know what, we need your passion, we need your help. How are we going to address ocean acidification? And I remember looking at this man and saying, I don't know how to advise you to do that. And I don't have the ability, the bandwidth to be able to focus on that as well. But that was, someone asking me something 7 or 8 years ago. And what I realize now, and I continue to learn every day, is how interconnected all of this is. So, if someone's inland, here are the things that they might want to consider about single-use plastic in particular. It may not be so good for their health to be eating and drinking all of their food packaged in this stuff. Why is that? That's because plastic, which is primarily made from fossil fuels and oil and natural gas, what the chemicals that are added to the carbon source to plasticize it are groups of chemicals you may have heard of. I know you've heard of them, Shelby, bisphenols and phthalates. And even if something's BPA free, it may be made with BPB or BPS or BPZ. And these chemicals have been studied. And what we're learning when we study these chemicals is that they impact human health and they function like endocrine disruptors. They impact our endocrine system. So it's a little bit like synthetic estrogen. And not to go way down a rabbit hole on this, and you can learn about it if you want to. There's lots of information out there. But if you're inland and you're eating and drinking all your food packaged in this stuff, not only does that potentially impact your own health or the health of your family, but those materials probably are not going to be recycled. If anything, they'll be downcycled or buried in a landfill or in the environment somewhere or burned. And so it's really important to consider all those things way before we ever get to the ocean. And then what you have to realize is that when we burn it, we're creating particulate pollution and we are contributing to ocean acidification and climate change.
Right. And I feel like one of the big issues we're going to see now, considering the times we live in with the pandemic, is most people will be searching for things like triple wrapped in plastic. So it's like a guarantee that it's clean, when really we're seeing that the virus is living on plastic longer, and having these usable options are still very viable to be sustainable.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm finding personally at home with our family, and learning from talking to other family and friends, is that this is an opportunity for us to have a kind of reset, to slow down, to think, and what we're using in the home, if we're growing food, if we're going to farmers markets when we're able to go out, or the market, and what we're preparing is, the best part of that is going to be reusing things, and reusing containers, and reusing glass jars, and really thinking about, it's almost like homesteading or something. It's like DIY, do it yourself, self-resilience, self-reliance. How do we learn how to make bread? My sister found this great recipe for no-knead bread from the New York Times, from Mark Bittman. And I think she and her family have made bread 3 or 4 times and said it's delicious. So, I mean, what an amazing thing that my 8-year-old niece is learning how to make bread right now. She's going to be a more self-sufficient person. I don't know. Shelby, I was going to ask you, like, how you feel in all of this right now with relationship to the work that we're doing.
Right. I know, at least for me personally, it's very discouraging seeing people be like, we must stay away, everything has to be triple wrapped. But I feel like we can, like you said, really take this as a learning time. It's like people are going to be stuck inside. They have so many skills they can grow upon. I was writing a little article about how you can be green during Earth Day inside. And, it's kind of like, this is the perfect time where you can go through all your waste, give yourself a waste audit, see what products you're using and what sustainable options you can give up or switch to gradually. And also, like, people can learn to compost now. This is like the perfect time. So I feel like there is a lot of kind of darkness looming over with the whole world right now, and kind of like corporations taking advantage of people in the situations they're in. But I really feel like if we all take the time to just reflect on at least our own personal behaviors, I feel like this could be a really great time to just learn so much about yourself and your own consumption. And like, that's why I do No Straw November, so people can have kind of an understanding of their own personal waste. So I feel like this is just a great time for people to reevaluate their own footprint on the planet. And hopefully people.
I have to say, I agree with you. And I also feel like we have the opportunity right now to create it's very transformational time, because we have to slow down and take time to be more thoughtful. And it's a moment you can see the planet responding to everything that's happening, which is remarkable. And we're, a small part of nature and the planet, but it's amazing the impact that we have and the way that we crazily burn carbon. It's just crazy.
Yeah, if need be, we can slow things down. And when we, like, the world gets turning again, I feel like we definitely have to take starting things up in a slower precaution, because we are seeing such these positive benefits. And it's like the swans returning to Venice. I don't want them to just, like, people remember that as a one-time thing. I want this to be a normal thing, that we see and appreciate all this nature. So I really hope people don't take it for granted in a short period of time.
I hope they don't too. Yeah.
Be sad. I don't want that. I also really loved when Sylvia Earle was talking about this with Liz, how they were saying that people are starting to grow victory gardens, because we have called this pandemic a war, and it is a war against a lot of things, but it's just kind of finding hope in those small objects. You can grow it for yourself. It's very sustainable because it doesn't have to be transported anywhere, and you can give it to your neighbors in need. So I feel like that was a really great and cute idea to do as well.
Yeah, who's been talking about that a lot as well as one of our notable coalition members is the chef Alice Waters, who has the restaurant Chez Panisse in Berkeley. And she has a book that she wrote when she first founded the Edible Schoolyards, which I think that program this was the 25-year anniversary of that program. But I remember when she created it. She wrote this book that's so beautiful, and I remember reading it and literally with tears running down my face when she talked about victory gardens that every school had and that families planted to help contribute to basically supporting the war effort, and the fact that supplies were limited for people and people had to become more self-reliant. and self-sufficient. So I don't think that we need to think of a victory garden in terms of war. And I don't even think we need to think of the issue of plastic pollution as something that we're fighting against. I think that the writing is on the wall, that the planet and the world, the globe at large, but planet Earth seems to be much happier when we're not burning a bunch of fossil fuels and burning a bunch of carbon and emitting that into the atmosphere. So if we can follow what the Earth is telling us right now during coronavirus and COVID, those messages are that as part of nature, we have a responsibility, and our responsibility is to shift the systems and move in a direction that is going to support life so that it can thrive, human life, animal life, plants, everything on the planet. Because they're all we're a network and we're all supporting each other to make life possible. So I actually feel really hopeful during this time. I don't know if that's like completely crazy, but I wake up every day feeling really hopeful. And I hope that anybody who's tuning in is thinking about creative and positive ways that we can begin to move the ship in the right direction,
Right.
whichever direction that is, but towards a world free of plastic pollution, and to divesting from fossil fuels and dependence on that, and to green and clean technologies and industries. And I'm not talking about burning a bunch of stuff. I just always want to be clear about that. Waste to energy and incineration is not one of the solutions that is part of my playbook.
Right. So we have some questions here that I would really like to ask you. So this one's from Jim, and it's addressed to both of us. And it's, how do you see the future playing out as you continue to engage with the world on climate/pollution and creating a sustainable and vivid world for you and follow-on generations?
Well, I feel like that's what we've just been talking about all of this time.
Yeah.
How do I see it playing out? How do you see it playing out, Shelby?
Well, I'm a big advocate of everyone having equal education. And I know growing up in inland California, which is, everyone's like, oh, it's California, you're like right on the coast. But I know, especially being from an agricultural town, our education regarding the ocean is very limited, and we do not have any idea how plastic pollution even disrupts our agricultural systems. And it's just not a connected topic to a lot of people. So I feel like the best tool we could give the future generation is the education towards it, and just overall expanding their mindsets and showing them the potential, how if we take care of it, what can happen, if we mistreat it, what can happen. So I'm a big advocate for education regarding the whole issues we face.
I agree with you 100%, 1,000%. I'm a big supporter of education and educating ourselves and helping educate other people around this issue. But I think an important thing you just made me think of is that, most people don't realize that plastic and our dependence on plastic, and particularly the way we use single-use plastics, disproportionately impacts lower income communities around the world and across the United States. And that's because from extraction through manufacturing, through production and use, and then end-of-life waste management, waste to energy, incineration, landfill, dumping, all of these things, and often many of these things are these facilities for those different components on the chain are located in low-income communities where people are directly living across the street. Their community center, their school is across the street. I saw a community center in Houston on the Gulf Coast that was built by ExxonMobil across the street from their, processing facility. And the kids in these areas and these neighborhoods have much higher levels of asthma and all kinds of health issues because they are closer to these factories and these processing plants. And that is, that is injustice. That is environmental and social justice issue. And I think we need to be conscious of that. And even the idea and the concept of away. Oh, I put it in this bin and it goes away. There is no away. There is no away. Away is someone else's backyard. Away is us shipping last year 88,000 containers of plastic to Southeast Asia. That is something that we calculate in the United States in our recycling numbers, but it's not real. So that is not truly recycling something. That is putting it upon people in another country. And it's immoral to do that. So we really have to do a big rethink right now. I think we need to move towards policy and legislation that support refillable systems and reusable systems and the infrastructure to support that. And if we shift in that direction, we will have very little that we need to recycle. I also think that we need to look at materials as being valuable, right, versus as garbage, rubbish, waste, and litter. If we truly calculated the true cost of plastic or single-use plastic and took all the other costs, which are externalized, the cost to our environment, our oceans, the air, our water, the fact that we're finding plastic and microplastics in salt, in beer, in, you know, all these different, you know, shellfish and fish, seafood, sea life, being ingested by the entire marine chain. If we truly took those externalities and put them into the cost of plastic, plastic would not be, it would no longer be an inexpensive material. And truly, it's not an inexpensive material. So.
Yeah, and the thing that really frustrates me is when people hear about all this socioeconomic injustice regarding these places that have the plastic production plants on them. They're like, oh, why don't they just move away? Well, when your whole community is based on that one plant and you have generations going through it that can't afford to move away, it's a very unjust system that doesn't give them any leeway to leave. And it's like, it's a whole cycle. It's very frustrating to hear people
exactly. And when those families and your community, those are where everybody's got their jobs.
Right. And it's like your houses are still in the settlement area. It's like there's no getting away from it. So it's just creating that leeway for it. And it's a very frustrating topic, but definitely legislation we need.
I was going to say, you know, one of the things that we've created as Plastic Pollution Coalition is we've worked with other coalition members and groups and created a plastic reduction legislative toolkit, which is just available for people to use and can be found on our website. I think that policy and legislation is a great way to change things. And I'm very excited. I don't know if you've been following, Shelby,
talk about the Break Free from Plastic bill.
Yeah, it's called the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. And it was introduced by Udall and Lowenthal in February. So yeah, it's exciting, isn't it?
Exciting. I know. Yeah. You have your youth there as well, Hannah for Change, a dear friend of mine. And I've always appreciated you because you're such a big supporter of youth in the movement. You really give us that kind of confidence and motivation to keep going. So transitioning into that, what role do you think the youth play in this movement? And why are you such a big supporter of us?
I'm a big supporter of youth because I learned so much from you guys. Because, you know, I've heard Melody Wyson from Bye Bye Plastic Bags and her sister Isabel say many times, well, we may only be 25% of the population, but we're 100% of the future. And you know, this is your world, and I'm sorry that we're handing it to you in this, you know, precarious position right now. But I'm a firm believer that anything that we can imagine can be, and that we can reimagine things, redesign things, change systems, and that is really going to come from you guys. It's going to come from the youth. It's going to come from the youth who are so much smarter and can make all of these different connections to climate change, to all of the other issues that we care about and that young people care about, and take that with them and register to vote and vote. You know, vote with that in mind, vote with the future of the planet and the natural world and protecting it in mind. And I feel like I've learned so much from my friendships with young people that I know, like you, Shelby, and Hannah Testa, and Lily from Lily's Plastic Pickup, and Shates Martinez, and Shea Bastida, and all of these wonderful young people. So, thank you. I mean, thank you. And like heirs to our oceans. I mean, all of these young people who are really taking it upon themselves, taking it within their grasp to be creative, think about solutions, speak about it passionately, to help share that, and also to feel empowered to go to the powers that be and our politicians and our representatives and have frank conversations with them and help guide them so that they can make the right choice for younger generations.
Right. I know I did some lobbying on Capitol Hill here, and I was very open and honest with the legislators I was meeting with, and I think they're honestly taken aback that the young and the youth had such a, we'll talk to them about anything, and we're very straightforward with how we feel. And the adults who I was with were kind of just like tiptoeing around the situation, but I was lucky to be with like such strong youth who are just like, no, like this is the issue we're seeing, and we really need your support on this. So I definitely agree that to all the young, everyone else in the world for taking action, I 100% appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone else in the movement. And I feel like it's definitely better when we all work together instead of just trying to do it yourself. So I definitely appreciate your support.
Yeah, that's something I really love too, is the idea of collaboration, which is part of why we created the coalition. How do we get groups that maybe are focused on very different aspects of the plastic pollution issue to collaborate and work together and to share common messaging? And it's something that I feel like we've been very, very successful at. And it has also been aided and abetted and supported by creative ideas like your idea to create No Straw November, Jackie Nunez's idea to create the last plastic straw, and 30 to 50 other straw campaigns, many of them started by one individual, just like you, or Jackie riding around on her bike and talking to people in Santa Cruz. Things start somewhere. And I remember people thinking I was like a crazy bag lady when I first started because I was making artwork out of plastic bags. At this point, I definitely have like a love-hate relationship with the material I use for my artwork, but I still feel like I can use the art that I'm making as a platform to help me talk about the issue and communicate with people. And I'm not, I don't think I have all the answers. We don't, but I'm open. And I feel like that's the other thing I really love about working with you, Shelby, and other young youth ambassadors who are really focused on creating change, is that you guys are hopeful, excited, and open to learning. And that's a really important thing not to lose sight of for all of us.
Right. We have a really interesting question here from Corey, and I feel like it's very important. They say, it seems everything you find in the grocery stores is wrapped in plastic. What can we do to encourage the grocery store suppliers, etc., to wrap their products in alternative substances that are ecologically sustainable?
So, well, my answer to that would be I do my best, and obviously everything is a little bit more challenging right at this moment as the world addresses the health situation, but I do my best to support local farmers and farmers markets. Granted, I live in Los Angeles, it's a giant city. There's farmers markets almost every day of the week in different parts of the city. And I know that they closed them down last week, but now some of them have reopened because they've been fighting to prove that they're an essential business that needs to be available to people. So my preference personally is to buy things unpackaged, fruit and vegetables, and also to have what I like about farmers markets or even my local health food store or local market is I like having a relationship with the people who I buy my food from or who grow my food, and being able to say to them, great, I was wondering if I come back next week and bring my own glass jars or glass containers, could you put this in my container for me? And oftentimes people will say yes. Again, things may be somewhat suspended right now, and that's just a hiccup, I think. But that's the direction we've been heading. We've been heading in this beautiful direction towards reusables and refillables and more refillable shops opening and bulk stores and things where you can come in with your own bags and containers and purchase things and that are unpackaged. So I'm a big fan of buying things unpackaged, using real stuff and making real stuff. And in Australia, there's a hashtag they use, which is nude food. And that they mean food that's unpackaged, which I kind of love. Buy nude food, buy food that is, another thing we were saying is shop naked, buy food that's unpackaged. So that whole idea of, and think reusable, not disposable, when you look at the packaging choices that you have for your products. So a great way to start is just with your local market, asking the manager if it would be possible to buy particular things without a bunch of wrapping on them. Because there's no reason that all of our fruit and vegetables need to be individually sacked in different bags.
Yeah, I've also seen really fun campaigns from Greenpeace, and what they do is they kind of hold like in-store riots where they go and they buy all their food that they want that is wrapped in plastic, and they take a shopping cart and they literally leave all the plastic stuff in there, and they only take all the naked food because they're like, we want, this is your, like, we want to make a point, like, we don't need things wrapped in plastic.
Shelby, I don't actually think it's called a riot. I think they call it a flash mob when they do it. Not a riot.
Such a fun way. And so one thing that I usually do is I'm kind of notorious for my emails that I send to different companies. So usually whenever I find something that really irritates me, I always email the CEO of the company and I'm like, I don't understand why you're single-use plastic straws out here. There's so many different great options. And I feel like something that I would do if I was like extremely frustrated and I didn't have those options, I would definitely write to the chain's leader, write to the store manager, kind of really explain the points. And if that doesn't work, make a petition and you really start it from the ground up, or at least go to the top person, because once you hit the top person, like they can't pass it on to anyone. They have to personally read it and see the impact they're making. So
Shelby, could you talk about the success that you had with Alaska Airlines? Because I feel like you did exactly that. And I think people might like to know about it. Yes. I'd like to hear about it from you.
Okay. So for Alaska Airlines, my aunt, she's a frequent flyer for work. So she would always tell me about how she'd get these little plastic straws, little plastic stirs. And she was really fed up with it after hearing everything that I would always talk about. And so I took it upon myself to email the CEO, and I really laid out the points. And luckily, I've had a really big ocean education background from Monterey Bay Aquarium. And that's how I kind of grew and learned what was happening through their teen programs. And I'm also Girl Scout. So it was for my Girl Scout Gold Award, I created my nonprofit, Junior Ocean Guardians. So I was like, I have all this information. I have all this like frustration for it. So I sent an email to the CEO of Alaska, and I was like, you can't do this. Like, this isn't right. And I really laid out the points. And the biggest thing that I always suggest when people are emailing heads of business and just anything in that sense, you never write it combative. Like I always reach out to the person and I let them know what they're doing wrong, but I want to help them. I want to be a part of this system where you change and you grow because you want to. We're going to get to the point where people are going to like have to forcibly change to better our planet, but I really want to help people on that journey. So I emailed them, the CEO got back to me, and he was really touched by it. And then so we ended up rolling it out later, and Alaska Airlines got rid of their single-use plastic stirs and straws and citrus picks, and now they only have sustainable options. So it's kind of just really letting these people know, because sometimes they don't even see the wrong in it. They're just part of the process. So
one of the other things that you had mentioned before that I'm super excited about is the Story of Plastic film documentary that's finally going to come out. And I don't know if people are aware of this, but Discovery Channel is going to distribute it, and they're premiering it on television, I think in 163 different countries on April 22nd, Earth Day. And I believe it's going to be at 5:00 in those different countries, but I'm not 100% sure of that. So you have to follow it to keep track, but I'm very excited because I think that it's an excellent film to help people make all of these different connections, many of the things that we've touched upon, and also talk about solutions.
Right. I always say that, when you watch this film, you see all the plastic washing up on all the different shores, like the Philippines and whatnot. I feel like if we just had one day in the United States where one of our coasts was hit so bad, like there's this hit every day, we would see immediate change. But it's just like that's such out of sight, out of mind dilemma we all face. I feel like that is one of the biggest issues we have in this movement. So I really feel like having films and other kind of substance for us to see that is very eye-opening, like Story of Plastic, is going to be very beneficial to everyone understanding. Because it's like someone won't understand. It's like, oh, my straw, like you said, it's just a way.
Right.
But that's washing up on someone's homeland, and it's causing all these really detrimental issues.
Right.
So I'm really excited for people to see the reality of it on other people's shores.
Well, I think that it's also happening here. It's not that people don't see it. It's just that I think we don't make a connection between what we are purchasing and what's happening in terms of what washes up. And I always say that once plastic gets into the ocean and into our waterways, lakes and rivers, it knows no boundaries. I mean, it's not any one country's responsibility, or frankly, it's not the public and our children's responsibility to be cleaning it all up. I think it's the responsibility of the companies who are very good at branding all of their packaging. It's their responsibility, and they need to step up, and we need to have extended producer responsibility. They need to take responsibility for 100% of the packaging that they choose to deliver and sell their products wrapped in. So that may sound like a big ask, but I don't think it is. And it's amazing to me that they've been able to hoodwink the public.
Yeah, we have a really nice comment by Stephanie, and they said, it's becoming easier to teach people about recycling and how to recycle. What's the best way to get them to shift trying to use little to no plastic? People think they're doing good by recycling, but you don't want to discourage that because it's great, but how do you feel about switching people's minds?
Well, we just released a report yesterday that 88,000, I think it was 88,000 containers of plastic, sorry, I don't have it open in front of me, I should open it, were exported last year to other countries. And yet we calculate that into our recycling rate for the US. Now, our recycling rate, just for everyone's edification, in the United States was, for plastic, less than 9%. But as of what's called the China Sword, which is in 2018, when China said, you know what, we're creating enough of our own plastic. We don't need yours anymore. Stop shipping it here. There was a projection that our recycling rates, which was basically included shipping, would drop to 4.4% by the end of 2018, and that by the end of 2019, the projection was that it would drop to 2.6%. So really, honestly, we are not recycling plastic. And I don't want to say that to you to discourage people from recycling. I put things in my recycling bin, and we are certainly not total angels at my house. People buy things that come in plastic or are wrapped in plastic. And I do optimistically and say a little prayer and put them in the recycling container. But I'm not sure how much of that actually does get recycled or it's actually downcycled. I'm really not sure about that. And so, while I don't want to discourage people from recycling, I would say it's safe to say that the recycling systems in the United States need a total reboot. And that reboot also needs to come from these industries and these multinational corporations who have spent millions and millions of dollars on Keep America Beautiful PSAs, telling us don't be a litter bug, give a hoot, don't pollute, and have your kids clean up everything. You know, they need to step up and actually start changing their supply chains, delivery chains, and the way that they deliver and package their products. And when I see those companies finally doing that, then I will know that they get it, rather than greenwashing stuff. So right. What do you think, Shelby?
You gave in your TED Talk, you gave a really important point, how we've changed it to from the 3 R's to the 4 R's, and how really the first R should be refusing. And if you have these options to refuse single-use plastic items and really kind of switch those alternatives to be your main source of whatever you're switching, that is also a really positive way to encourage that. Whenever I go out and speak to younger kids in classrooms, they always talk about how they are reusing things or repurposing things and recycling things. And it's just, you know, you really want to encourage that mindset because they're really excited to be helping out with the planet. But it is really installing that mindset that once you refuse something, instead of trying to take care of it afterwards, you're stopping the source you're stopping the problem right at the source. So I feel like it's still encouraging those mindsets of recycling and how we can take care of it on the after part is really important. And for some people that gives them a lot of hope as well, but it's just encouraging people to just stray away from it in the beginning, you know.
I agree.
Yeah.
I hope that was helpful to answer the question.
Yeah, I hope so too, Stephanie. I hope your question was answered. We have one from Maria, and she says, hello from Ecuador. Right now, the plastic industry here is making campaigns to encourage people to use single-use plastic like cutlery and dishes, like in a good way to prevent contamination spreading of coronavirus. Is this something happening in the United States? And is there any research or evidence you could provide to educate people on this topic? And I would say we don't really know as much as coronavirus right now because it's so new and a lot of testing hasn't been done. But I definitely do see, at least in my personal life, the push of a lot of plastics and people really, like we said before, saying it's a cleaner option. So that's what I'm seeing on my side.
Yeah, and I would say that the plastic industry is definitely trying to seize this moment to play upon people's fears and try and encourage the use of more single-use plastic at this time. And interestingly, you can juxtapose that with a study that just came out where they looked at COVID and SARS and how long the virus lasts on materials. And it seemed to last the longest on plastic, according to two different reports. One said 72 hours, the other said 7 to 9 days. So I'm sure that there'll be more information coming out about this right now, but I would say if you don't need to take plastic to-go utensils and you have steel or wood or, you know, whatever the utensils are that your flatware that you use at home, washing that with hot water and soap, if you're able to, would probably be the best thing to use during this time. Use real plates and real things and wash them the same way that we're washing our hands a lot.
Right. And then for Dane, I hope I say that right, I'm sorry if not. What direct alternatives to plastic or sustainable solutions do you think are the most promising in solving our dependence on plastics? At least for myself, but my favorite thing to change to an alternative from plastic was my skincare and like my hair care and personal care, because I feel like that really gets you in touch with the issue of plastic pollution, just seeing how much you just use for yourself. And that changing, to like shampoo bars, which I definitely recommend, and just having that personal connection to plastic, it really opens your mind to bigger things. And I would definitely say personal care is one of the biggest ones that I at least always recommend people to at least try to switch out, because I do feel like that aids kind of a more connection to the issue.
And I would add to that, what are some of the solutions I'm seeing that I think are the most promising? There's a lot of really interesting stuff happening with glass. There's a kind of glass that's being made in Austria that is being made using a special technique that causes it doesn't break. And I took a sample amber glass beer bottle that they had made and dropped it multiple times from way up in the air onto cement, and it did not break. So that I think is really promising. I'm also excited about a lot of stuff I'm seeing happen with algae and seaweed. And just rethinking things. For me, it's like, what did my grandparents use? My dad is going to be 90 this year, and he lived during the Depression. He was born in 1930. So he's very much a person who saves and reuses everything. And I think that that's a good way to think about this as well, that these are valuable resources. So even when you use something that's single use, it took energy and materials and water to manufacture that single-use thing that you're then going to throw away. So, at what point on a chart or a graph do these things cross against each other, making it better to use reusables?
Shelby, Dianna, hi, Joshua here. I just wanted to let folks know that we're kind of heading into the final bit of our time here, and wanted to remind folks you can raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question verbally and join the conversation. Shelby, if you see any hands out there that you'd like to hear from, and please continue to submit your questions via Q&A. Shelby, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. So a lot of people have amazing questions, and I'm really sorry we can't get to all of them. One is talking about how in Austin they had voted to ban single-use plastic bags, but the government overruled the ban, saying it was illegal, preventing people from choosing alternatives for themselves. But because folks were still getting used to bringing their own bags, they still continued to use reusable bags. And many stores did not go back to offering single-use bags. Habit is very important. And I definitely agree with that comment, Sherry. And it can be really frustrating to do legislation work. I remember when I was on the floor for my No Straw November resolution, which isn't really like a ban in any way, it's just awareness. I was still fighting against big oil to get it passed. And I was on the floor of the legislation and I was wearing my Girl Scout uniform and people still voted no on it. And it was just like this whole like confusing time. But I definitely agree that is having hope and just overall kind of creating the norm of it is really important.
I would agree with that as well. I think that behavior change is very valuable. And I've had friends say, but what can I do? I'm only one person.
Right.
And the feeling is that you as one person can begin and you can expand. You can start with a reusable cup or a reusable bottle that you bring with you everywhere, or a reusable bag. I carry bamboo utensils, which I love. They have chopsticks in the set too. But you start with that and you end up having conversations with friends and family about it. And maybe a holiday comes up and you get a few of those for some of the people that you love and care about. And then they start thinking they're cool and other people start asking you. I still like straws sometimes, but not plastic straws. So I carry stainless steel straws with me and I slide them into my bamboo utensil kit. So just little things like that. I think one person and that behavior change can make a difference, and it can have a ripple effect that affects your whole group of friends, your family, and your community. And that's a great place to start.
I agree. We have a hand raised from Rob. So if we want to hear your question. Okay, cool.
Hi, Rob. You'll just need to unmute yourself at the bottom left so you can speak, please. Okay, Rob does not seem to be unmuting himself just yet. Anybody else who would like to raise their hand, please feel free. I see a hand from Bettina.
Okay, yeah.
Hi, Bettina. Can you unmute your line? Go ahead with your question.
Thank you so much, Shelby. It's nice to meet you over this forum. I started a campaign with our organization. I'm with an Audubon chapter, and we've done things based on your No Straw November, and we've revamped what we do with using reusable plates at our meetings and so on. So it's been pretty fantastic. I wanted to ask you about the Four Oceans. Do either of you know anything about that company, Four Oceans, and whether their cleanups have been worked with biologists in order to understand whether their cleanups are actually impacting the environment in ways that might not be as helpful as cleaning up plastics? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so I've had a couple calls with those guys, and we've been trying to encourage them to add brand audit data to their cleanups. That is what we see as the most valuable thing about any kind of cleanup that you can do, even if it's a small one with one person or family and friends, is to, if you collect brand audit data while you're doing the cleanup, you can actually submit it to the brand audit part of Break Free from Plastic, the movement on the website. And that is very, very helpful information. I think the most helpful information that can come from any kind of cleanup, because it allows us to take a look at who the top polluters are. And actually, of course, from the World Cleanup Day cleanups for the last 3 years, Coca-Cola has been the top corporate polluter for the last 3 years. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, Bettina, but I did encourage and invite the guys from Four Oceans to consider doing that.
Okay, I actually was talking about they're going into the environment to remove the trash. When you see them on beaches where there might be, say, nesting turtles or, you know, those kinds of impacts where you see them diving under the ocean to pick up trash off the bottom of the ocean that may have been there long enough that they're impacting fish or turtles or whatever under the ocean. That's the kind of impacts I was talking about. But yeah, that's great to know about the branding.
Yeah, but what I would say with regards to what you're talking about, that's part of what helped me realize that we can't clean up the whole ocean, is that all of this stuff, even something that's only been out there floating for a day or two, has got life on it. And, you know, it's pretty crazy. I think that's why we need to figure out really, truly how to turn off the tap and not use this material in a way that it even has a possibility of ending up in the ocean and our waterways.
Right. And I personally don't know much about the company as a whole, so I'm not really the person to speak on that, but I do think that having a brand audit would be the most important thing they could add. Okay, cool.
Shelby, any other exciting things that you want to make sure that we talk about today? I'm so excited to see you.
I know. How are you, first of all?
I'm good. How are you?
Do you have the one thing you want to do when you get out of quarantine? Like, what's one thing you can't wait to do outside?
I can't wait to hug and kiss other people in my family who are quarantined in other places not with us.
I know. I can't wait to just walk outside and like be able to go into like a national park and be like, oh, wow, you know, finally relaxation. Well, we have a ton more questions, and unfortunately we can't get to all of them. So I definitely recommend reaching out to both of us if you have any pressing questions. And I really thank you so much for joining me, Dianna. I very much love and appreciate you. And I hope your quarantine goes well.
Thank you, Shelby. I love and appreciate you too. And thank you for your passion and your great work. And I'm excited to see what's coming next, what you're into next. So I know it will be an evolution from all of this, but I'm excited to see it. And I look forward to seeing you again in person. I'm so happy that we got to spend time together in Dana Point for the Algalita Youth Summit. That was really, really great. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We appreciate it very much. And I'm looking forward to the next town hall meeting. I think it's with an astronaut.
It is. How exciting.
I'm so excited. Yeah. Oh, it's Catherine Caddy Coleman. That's so exciting. So I hope you guys will all tune in. That's, April 14th at 11 a.m. Pacific. And thank you to Ocean Elders for inviting us to do this and be a part of it. Really appreciate it.
Great. Dianna, Shelby, awesome conversation and exactly what we're looking for here in these sessions. So thanks for being part of our third installment here with the Ocean Elders Group. Information for contact, websites on the screen there. Please be sure to make a note of them. Dianna and Shelby's organizations are happy to hear from you and keep this conversation going. It doesn't stop here in these sessions when we get together. So Shelby and Dianna shaking her head. No, it does not stop here. So reach out, stay in touch with us, find the recording of this and other Ocean Elders events on the Ocean Elders YouTube channel. A little bit of technical support and production supplied by the webinar here. My name's Joshua. Such an honor to host the session with you. And thanks so much for your time today, everybody. Please enjoy the rest of your day.
Stay safe and healthy, everybody.
Yes, definitely. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joshua.
Pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Shelby.
Thank you.